Welcome to Unseen Rite. Imagine walking onto a quiet farmstead in rural Indiana, 1908. The sun is setting behind a charred skeleton of a farmhouse, smoke still curling into the cold night air. Beneath the ashes lie secrets darker than any fire could burn. More than 40 men buried in shallow graves, dismembered, silent forever. A woman named Belle Gunness promised them love, security, a future. Instead, she delivered death. This is not just a tale of murder. It is a story about power disguised as vulnerability, about a widow who mastered the art of control, who wielded loneliness like a weapon and turned trust into a trap. You are about to step into a world where desire, greed, and cruelty intersect, revealing truths long suppressed by time and silence. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss these dark historical mysteries. In a country growing restless with change, Belle's farm seemed like a beacon for those seeking hope, especially lonely men answering her ads in the local newspapers. She portrayed herself as a grieving widow, struggling to raise children alone. The perfect cover. But behind that facade was something chillingly calculated. She wasn't just seeking companionship, she was hunting. Each letter she wrote promised marriage, a future together, but every man who arrived at her doorstep never left alive. Some say she drugged their coffee, others whisper of strychnine slipped into drinks. The result was always the same: death, dismemberment, and burial in the dark soil of that quiet farm. And tell us in the comments, what state are you listening from? We love hearing from our viewers across America. The official investigation was triggered when a man named Asle Helgelian came searching for his missing brother, Andrew. Andrew had answered Belle's call for a husband and vanished without a trace. What authorities found on that farm shocked even the hardest detectives. Severed limbs buried in burlap sacks, heads removed with surgical precision, and bodies hidden in the hog pen. But the greatest horror was still to come. Among the remains discovered after a devastating fire was a headless body found in the cellar, initially believed to be Belle herself. Yet, the coroner noted something strange. The body was 5 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter than the woman who had run this farm. No signs of smoke inhalation suggested the victim died before the blaze. Had Belle Gunness faked her death? Had the widow of death slipped away, leaving behind a carefully constructed illusion and dozens of men buried under the surface? What followed were decades of sightings, confessions, and more questions than answers. Tonight, I will take you deeper into Belle's twisted world, a realm where love is a lie, power is a poison, and history hides the truth. You are about to learn secrets the world wanted buried, so brace yourself. The darkness is waiting. Belle Gunness was more than just a cold-hearted killer. She was a master of manipulation. Born in Norway in 1859, she emigrated to the United States in the late 19th century, carrying with her not just hopes for a new life, but a ruthless will to survive at any cost. The early years of her American story are marked by tragedy and reinvention, but beneath the surface, a darker hunger grew. Belle married a man named Mads Sørensen, with whom she had several children. But tragedy struck again when Sørensen died, leaving Belle a widow burdened with the care of her family. Or so the story went. Soon after, the widow placed personal ads in newspapers seeking new husbands. What those men didn't realize was that Belle was no ordinary woman. She was a calculating predator hiding behind the mask of grief and vulnerability. Her farm, on the outskirts of Porte, Indiana, became a stage for her deadly game. The house itself was a fortress of secrets, rooms filled with children's toys beside hidden traps, cupboards concealing poison, the air thick with silence and dread. Men who arrived were greeted warmly, invited inside with smiles and promises. But behind the door, a sinister plan awaited. What made Belle's killing so terrifying wasn't just the violence, it was how methodical she was. She used drugs like chloral hydrate to incapacitate her victims, drugs common enough at the time to avoid suspicion. Then came the final blow and the gruesome task of dismemberment. Witnesses described her as calm, almost clinical, as she disposed of the bodies, burying them in shallow graves or hiding them in the hog pen, wrapped in burlap sacks. She even killed some of her own children, according to investigators. Why? To cover her tracks, to silence anyone who could reveal her secret. The idea that a mother could betray her own flesh is a cruelty so profound it defies understanding. But for Belle, love was never real. It was power, control, and death. Her hired hand, Ray Lamphere, was both accomplice and victim. A man who loved her yet feared her, he eventually confessed to helping Belle hide the bodies and covering up the murders. His confession added a new layer of darkness to the story, revealing how deeply Belle controlled those around her. But despite the evidence, Belle herself vanished. The headless body found in the fire was never conclusively identified as hers. Some say she escaped, disappearing into the night to start anew. Others believe she died there, but even death could not stop the myth that grew around her. Belle Gunness was more than a serial killer. She was a shadow that stretched far beyond that Indiana farm, a symbol of ancient corruption, the twisted intersection of innocence and evil. And as you'll see, her story is only the beginning of a deeper darkness lurking beneath the surface of this country's history. The fire that consumed Belle Gunness's farmhouse on April 28, 1908, wasn't just a tragedy. It was the final act in a twisted drama of deception and murder. When firefighters arrived, the scene was grim. Flames licking at the charred remains of what was once a home, filled with false promises. Among the ashes, 4 bodies were found in the cellar, 3 small children and a headless adult. The immediate assumption was that the headless corpse was Belle herself. But the coroner's report shattered that belief. The adult body was noticeably smaller and lighter than Belle had been, and there were no signs of smoke inhalation, meaning the person died before the fire started. Someone had taken extreme measures, decapitation with a sharp blade, to conceal the victim's identity. This gruesome detail opened the door to one of the most chilling questions in this case. Had Belle staged her own death? The possibility that the real Belle Gunness escaped into the darkness was terrifying enough. If a woman capable of killing 40 men and her own children could vanish without a trace, what else was she capable of? The fear was that she might still be out there, living under a new identity, free and dangerous. Investigators soon began uncovering the full horror buried beneath the farm. In the hog pen, they unearthed a mass grave filled with dismembered bodies, wrapped in burlap sacks, limbs severed with surgical precision. Men who had answered her newspaper ads, men desperate for companionship, for a future, reduced to nothing but bones and flesh beneath the earth. One of the bodies was identified as Andrew Helgelian, a man who had gone missing after answering Belle's call. His gold tooth and silver watch betrayed his identity. For his brother Asel, this discovery was a nightmare made real, a reminder that the woman who promised safety was, in fact, a harbinger of death. Ray Lamphere, Belle's hired hand and accomplice, was arrested and confessed to helping dispose of bodies. His testimony painted a portrait of a woman who wielded control with terrifying efficiency, someone who saw people not as human beings, but as obstacles or tools to be used and discarded. The farm became a tomb, a monument to greed, cruelty, and the darkest corners of human nature. And yet, even with all the evidence, the truth about Belle Gunness remained elusive. Her disappearance turned her into a myth, a ghost haunting the American heartland, a reminder that evil often wears the face of trust. What drives a person like Belle Gunness to such unimaginable cruelty? What breaks the boundary between human compassion and cold-blooded murder? To understand her, we must look deeper, not just at the facts, but at the shadows behind them. Belle was born into hardship, in a world where women often had little power beyond the home. But Belle found a way to claim control, twisted as it was. She learned to weaponize loneliness, to cloak herself in victimhood while wielding a knife behind closed doors. Her story is not just about one woman's horror. It's a reflection of ancient patterns of manipulation and psychological control that have haunted humanity for centuries. Some historians believe Belle's actions were influenced by a darker legacy, a secret knowledge passed down through generations. A brutal survival code hidden beneath the surface of society, especially in isolated rural communities where law enforcement was sparse and rumors ruled. In these shadowed places, corruption often thrived, wrapped in silence and fear. The removal of heads from bodies, the surgical precision of dismemberment, even the use of poisons. These were not random acts of savagery. They suggest a chilling familiarity with death's mechanics. Was Belle a product of her time, or was she influenced by something older, more sinister? Some speculate that cults or secret societies once active in those regions taught such macabre skills, turning murder into ritual. Institutional manipulation also played a role. Police investigations in early 20th century America were often under-resourced and swayed by politics and social biases. Belle's status as a foreign widow gave her an outsider's advantage, allowing her crimes to remain undetected for years. Meanwhile, the men she preyed upon were often drifters or immigrants themselves, forgotten souls easy to vanish without question. And what of the children she killed? The ultimate betrayal, silencing the future to protect a secret past. It's a reminder that corruption often eats its own. Belle's story is a dark mirror reflecting how power corrupts absolutely, and how the most intimate bonds can be twisted into tools of control. As you listen, consider this. The surface of history is polished and neat, but beneath it lies a tangled web of forbidden knowledge and suppressed truths. Belle Gunness's story scratches at that web, revealing patterns that still echo in today's institutions and power structures. We are drawn to stories like hers because they expose a universal fear, the fear that beneath civility lurks chaos, and beneath trust, betrayal. But to truly understand, we must keep peeling back the layers. The darkness is never far away. In the years after the fire and Belle's disappearance, whispers began circulating, sightings, rumors, and wild theories. Some claimed she was spotted working as a housekeeper in another state. Others said she fled to Canada or even Norway. The more time passed, the more Belle Gunness became less of a person and more of a legend, a ghost story told around dinner tables and late-night campfires. A particularly haunting chapter unfolded in 1931, more than 2 decades after the farm fire. A woman named Esther Carlson was arrested in Los Angeles for poisoning a man for his money. What caught investigators' attention was not just her crime, but her striking resemblance to Belle Gunness. Some believed Esther was Belle, living a second life far from Indiana's cold soil. But Esther died of tuberculosis before anyone could confirm her identity. The mystery remained unresolved, a perfect ending for a story already steeped in unanswered questions. Throughout this time, law enforcement struggled to close the case. Without Belle's body or a confession from her, the full truth slipped through their fingers. It was as if Belle Gunness herself was the ultimate illusion. A dark magician who vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of bodies and broken hearts. Her farm, now nothing but charred earth and whispered memories, serves as a grim monument to evil's quiet persistence. It reminds us that some crimes are never fully uncovered, and some perpetrators evade justice by slipping through the cracks of history. But why does Belle's story endure, haunting us more than a century later? Because it taps into primal fears, the fear of betrayal by those closest to us, the fear that appearances deceive, and that evil can wear the most innocent mask. She embodied a terrifying truth. The darkness is not always obvious. Sometimes it hides behind the kind eyes of a grieving widow. Belle Gunness challenges us to question what we accept at face value, to look deeper beneath the surface. Her story is a warning that history is not just written by the victors, it's shaped by those who know how to disappear, and some secrets remain buried for a reason. Belle Gunness's victims were more than numbers in a grim tally. They were real men with hopes, fears, and dreams, all drawn into her deadly web by a simple newspaper ad. These men, many immigrants or wanderers seeking stability, answered her calls for companionship, believing they might find love or a fresh start. Instead, they walked into a trap crafted with cold precision. The letters Belle sent were carefully composed, full of warmth and promises. She crafted an image of a caring widow, vulnerable yet strong, inviting trust. These letters were her first weapon. Men traveled hundreds of miles, their hearts full of hope, unaware that their fate was sealed before they ever stepped foot on her land. Once they arrived, the facade deepened. Belle offered coffee laced with chloral hydrate, a drug used to sedate, easily slipped into a cup without suspicion. Some victims were poisoned with strychnine, a cruel and painful death. Her methods were cruel, but calculated to avoid immediate detection, ensuring she could continue undisturbed. The dismemberment of the bodies wasn't just a way to hide evidence, it was a grim ritual of control. Using tools with chilling precision, Belle severed limbs and heads, wrapping remains in burlap sacks before burying them in shallow graves or tossing them into the hog pen. The choice to dismember also speaks to a psychological need to fragment and erase her victims' identities, as if obliterating their existence would erase the risk they posed. What makes this darkness even more unsettling is how Belle's actions expose a deeper human vulnerability, the desperate need for connection that can be exploited by the most sinister forces. She preyed on loneliness, turning it into a weapon against those who trusted her. Her hired hand, Ray Lamphere, was caught in this cycle. His confession revealed a man torn between loyalty and fear, someone trapped in Belle's shadow. His role in hiding the bodies and facilitating murders showed how manipulation extended beyond the victims to those around her. In the quiet fields of Porte County, the earth still holds the bones of those forgotten men. Their stories are whispers in the wind, a reminder that beneath even the most peaceful surface, darkness can grow unchecked. Belle Gunness's farm was not just a killing ground, it was a stage for a chilling play of deception, power, and cold calculation. And it asks us to question, how well do we really know those we trust? Belle Gunness's story exposes more than just a murderous mind. It reveals a society's blind spots, its vulnerabilities exploited by someone who understood how to manipulate not just individuals, but the system itself. In the early 1900s, rural America was a place of isolation and suspicion, where the law was stretched thin and the marginalized were often invisible. Belle used this to her advantage. As a foreign widow with children, she fit a narrative that disarmed suspicion. Her gender and status made it less likely for neighbors or authorities to question her motives aggressively. Men who vanished after answering her ads were often considered runaways or drifters, unlikely to be missed or vigorously searched for. This institutional neglect is a key part of the darkness surrounding her case. It allowed Belle's crimes to persist longer than they should have. It also highlights how societal structures can inadvertently protect predators. By turning a blind eye, by dismissing the missing as inconsequential. Moreover, the psychological control Belle exerted went beyond her victims. Her hired hand, Ray Lamphere, was both helper and hostage, tangled in a web of fear and fascination. His eventual confession came only after his own crimes and suspicions were exposed, showing how manipulation extends into the minds of those who serve the powerful. Belle's legacy, then, is twofold. She is a symbol of personal evil, yes, but also a mirror reflecting the failures of a system that allowed such darkness to flourish. The story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, power, and the price of silence. The farm itself became a graveyard, not just for bodies, but for justice and accountability. What lessons does Belle Gunness's story hold for us today? How often do we ignore warning signs, dismiss victims, or allow appearances to mask dangerous realities? The answers are buried in that Indiana soil, alongside the secrets Belle tried to keep hidden forever. What happened to Belle Gunness after that fiery night remains one of the darkest unsolved mysteries in American true crime. Some say she escaped and lived out her days in the shadows, while others believe she died in the blaze, her real body hidden or destroyed beyond recognition. But the chilling truth is, no one ever truly knows. Sightings of Belle continued for years after the fire, an eerie presence slipping through towns, always just out of reach. Reports of a woman matching her description appeared from coast to coast, fueling rumors that she reinvented herself countless times, preying anew under different names. The woman arrested as Esther Carlson, accused of poisoning a man in California, only deepened the mystery. Could Belle have vanished so completely that she outwitted the law indefinitely? This unresolved fate is more than a footnote. It suggests a terrifying possibility that evil, when skillful enough, doesn't need to be caught to survive. It adapts, it hides, and it endures. Belle Gunness is a haunting reminder that some darkness refuses to die, even when we think the story is over. Her victims' bones lie beneath the earth, her children's graves silent witnesses, and the world moves on. But the shadows linger. History isn't always neat and tidy. It's messy, uncertain, filled with ghosts that don't rest. So what does Belle's story leave us with? A question that chills deeper than any crime scene. How many more hidden evils have slipped past our eyes, cloaked in trust and familiarity? How many truths have been buried so well they'll never see daylight? As you turn off this video tonight, remember, some secrets aren't just stories from the past. They are warnings from the darkness itself. The question is, are you ready to face what lurks beneath? The unsettling legacy of Belle Gunness lingers not just in cold bones beneath the Indiana soil, but in the patterns of control and manipulation that continue to echo through time. Her story forces us to confront a truth many prefer to ignore, that the darkest horrors often hide behind familiar faces, and that power can corrupt even the most intimate relationships. Belle's farm was more than a killing ground. It was a stage for psychological domination. She understood the fragility of trust, the hunger for connection, and she turned those vulnerabilities into weapons. Her victims weren't just killed, they were erased, fragmented, their identities severed along with their bodies. This was a ritual of obliteration, a statement that even life could be controlled and discarded. Institutions failed to stop her, not only because of limited resources, but because of societal blind spots, mistrust of outsiders, disregard for the marginalized, and assumptions about women's capacity for violence. Belle's crimes expose how systemic weaknesses create openings for evil to thrive, concealed in plain sight. As we peel back the layers of her story, we must ask ourselves, how many Belle Gunnesses walk among us today, cloaked in deception, exploiting our need to believe in goodness? How many secrets lie buried beneath the surface of normal life, waiting for the fire to expose them? Her tale is a grim reflection of ancient corruption, an echo of psychological control that spans centuries, a warning carved into history's darkest chapters. It's a reminder that the battle against hidden evil is never truly over. The question is whether we have the courage to keep looking, keep questioning, and never settle for what's comfortable or easy. In the end, Belle Gunness's story isn't just a relic of the past, it's a mirror held up to the present. It challenges us to face the uncomfortable truth that darkness doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles back at us. The case of Belle Gunness also exposes a chilling dimension of human nature, the way desperation and hope can blind even the most cautious. The men who answered her ads were not just victims of her cruelty, they were also men searching for connection in a harsh and lonely world. Their dreams became the bait, and Belle's cold calculation turned those dreams into tombstones. This dynamic speaks to a larger psychological truth. When fear and loneliness grow, they create cracks through which darkness can seep. Belle exploited those cracks, turning love into a weapon, trust into a trap. It's a disturbing reminder that vulnerability, while essential to human connection, can also be exploited with devastating consequences. Moreover, her ability to evade, capture, and manipulate those around her points to a sophisticated understanding of power, not just physical, but psychological. She controlled not only her victims' bodies, but their minds, weaving a narrative so convincing, it shielded her from suspicion for years. This kind of control, masked by normalcy, is one of the most dangerous forms of evil. Her hired hand, Ray Lamphere, is a tragic figure caught in this web. His loyalty, fear, and eventual betrayal illustrate how manipulation can trap even those closest to the source of darkness. His confession, while revealing, also reminds us that in the shadow of true evil, moral lines blur, and survival often demands impossible choices. Belle's farm was a prison, a theater of cruelty, but also a lesson about the fragility of trust, the dangers of ignoring warning signs, and the importance of questioning appearances. In a world still grappling with hidden predators and institutional failures, her story remains painfully relevant. So as you reflect on Belle Gunness's dark legacy, remember this: the greatest evil is not always obvious. Sometimes it smiles at you from across the room, wrapped in the guise of hope, love, or grief. And that is a truth we cannot afford to forget. The enduring mystery surrounding Belle Gunness is not only about who she was, but about the secrets that the land itself seems eager to keep. The soil of Porte County still guards its silent witnesses, the victims whose names were never known, whose stories were never told. Their bones, buried beneath the surface, carry the weight of forgotten voices and unanswered questions. Archaeologists and historians have often wondered what lies beneath other quiet farms and towns. How many crimes remain hidden in plain sight, their truths locked away by time and silence. Belle's farm was discovered because of a single man's desperate search for a missing brother. But how many others have gone unnoticed, buried by neglect and the passage of years? Her story forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that history is often shaped by what is hidden, not just what is recorded. The past is layered with suppression, of facts, of voices, of pain. And these buried truths continue to influence our present in ways we may never fully understand. Belle's disappearance, her possible escape, or death, these remain open questions that refuse closure. The uncertainty itself becomes a haunting presence, reminding us that some stories don't end with neat conclusions. Instead, they ripple outward, leaving a trail of darkness that still stirs beneath the surface. As the years pass, the myth of Belle Gunness grows stronger, feeding on our collective fear of the unknown. She becomes less a person and more an archetype, the shadowy figure who preys on trust, the woman who embodies both vulnerability and ruthless power. And in that archetype lies a warning that spans generations. The earth at Porte County may have swallowed her victims, but it has not silenced their memory, and neither should we. Because some truths, no matter how deeply buried, demand to be uncovered. Belle Gunness's dark legacy reaches beyond crime. It touches on the very nature of evil, disguised as normalcy. She wasn't a monster lurking in the shadows. She was a woman who lived among neighbors, who smiled, who charmed, and who promised love. This duality is what makes her story so haunting. Her ability to hide behind a veil of grief and kindness shows us how easily appearances can deceive. Evil doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it whispers sweet lies, weaving trust before striking. Belle's story warns us to question the stories we're told and the faces we trust. The psychological manipulation she employed, turning loneliness into a weapon, reflects a timeless tactic used by those who seek power over others. Control through trust, coercion masked by care. It's a dark lesson about human vulnerability and the lengths some will go to exploit it. Even today, this pattern repeats in countless ways, in abusive relationships, corrupt institutions, and hidden agendas. Belle's farm, with its hidden graves and whispered horrors, becomes a symbol of that ongoing struggle between truth and deception. Her victims, long forgotten by the world, remind us that behind every headline and crime statistic are lives shattered by betrayal. Remembering them is a way to honor the truth buried beneath the surface. In the end, Belle Gunness's story is a mirror reflecting our own fears about trust and evil. It challenges us to stay vigilant, to question what seems familiar, and to never accept darkness cloaked in light. Because sometimes the most dangerous monsters walk among us in plain sight. Belle Gunness's chilling story continues to ripple through time, reminding us that evil is not always loud or monstrous. It often wears a quiet face, blended seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. She wasn't just a serial killer. She was a master of disguise, turning the intimate bonds of family and trust into weapons. Her story reveals a disturbing truth about how deeply psychological control can penetrate. She didn't just kill bodies. She shattered lives, hopes, and futures. Each victim was more than a statistic. They were a testament to how easily darkness can hide behind a smile, a letter, or a cup of coffee. The unanswered questions surrounding her disappearance only deepen the mystery. Did she vanish to continue her reign of terror elsewhere? Was she ever truly caught? Or did she become a ghost, haunting the edges of our collective memory? The lack of closure makes her story a chilling parable about the limits of justice and the shadows that persist beyond it. And what of those who were complicit? Ray Lamphere's role shows how fear and loyalty can entangle people in webs of deceit, turning victims into enablers. The case is a stark reminder of how corruption isn't always solitary. It often spreads like a virus through those it touches. In the end, Belle Gunness's legacy is a warning echoing through the ages. Darkness can be patient, methodical, and cruel, and it can thrive wherever vigilance fades. Her story calls us to look closer, question deeper, and never forget that beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives, there can lurk an unfathomable abyss. The question remains, how many more secrets are buried, waiting for someone brave enough to unearth them? The haunting tale of Belle Gunness ultimately forces us to confront a profound and unsettling question. How well do we truly know the people around us? Her story is not just about murder and deception, it's about the terrifying ease with which evil can hide in plain sight, masked by the mundane. In every town, beneath the surface of everyday life, there are secrets. Belle's farm, with its hidden graves and unanswered mysteries, serves as a stark reminder that darkness often thrives where vigilance is weakest. The tragedy is that sometimes the ones we trust the most carry the deepest shadows. Her victims' silent graves speak volumes about lost lives, forgotten stories, and the cost of ignoring warning signs. Belle's story echoes beyond its era, a chilling symbol of psychological control, institutional failure, and human vulnerability. As we close this chapter, remember this: the greatest threats are often invisible, and the most dangerous faces are sometimes those that smile back at us. Belle Gunness's legacy is a warning and a challenge to never accept appearances at face value, to dig deeper and to keep searching for the truth, no matter how dark it may be. Because in the shadows of history, in the spaces between fact and myth, is where real danger hides, and only those who dare to look will ever find it. Belle Gunness's story ends not with justice served, but with a haunting silence that lingers to this day. No definitive answers, no final reckoning, only a legacy of vanished men, lost children, and a woman who disappeared like smoke in the wind. Her farm remains a silent witness, the earth still holding the fragments of a nightmare no one wanted to face. The fire that consumed her house didn't just destroy wood and stone, it tried to erase a dark chapter of history that many preferred to forget. But some truths refused to be buried. Belle Gunness was more than a serial killer. She was a symbol of the shadows lurking behind the facades of civility and trust. Her story reveals how psychological control, institutional blind spots, and ancient patterns of corruption can intertwine to create horrors that seem almost mythical. In the end, Belle's fate remains a riddle wrapped in darkness. Was she truly gone that night, or did she slip away to prey again? The unanswered questions are a mirror reflecting the uncomfortable reality that evil can be elusive, adaptable, and patient. Her victims may rest beneath the soil, but their stories demand remembrance. And Belle Gunness, the widow of death, continues to haunt not just the land she once ruled, but the very idea that darkness can wear the most familiar faces. So as you close this story, carry this truth with you. Some mysteries are never fully solved, and some shadows never fully fade. In the silent spaces between history and myth, the darkness waits, and it remembers.